Kia ora, namaskar everyone. I am Dr. Nitya Prakash, and today we are back with another exciting episode of the Outlier Room. Now, before I start, I want to mention that this episode is for those individuals, and we take them through the journey of those people who have lived the life of an outlier, those who have refused to live like an average individual. Today, the guest we have with us has represented New Zealand in the topmost level of cricket, has been a Commonwealth Games medalist, and has also become a bridge between India and New Zealand for global trade as well. Now, presenting the very special guest and a part of the organization that I represent, Mr. Geoff Allott. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Nitya.
Thank you, Jeff. So, Jeff, I have had the privilege of working with you for all these years. I want to understand you have represented New Zealand at the topmost stage. You have the credit of having the highest wicket in the 99 World Cup, along with late Shane Warne. And then we see a lot of people in the cricketing domain who stick to the norm and they don't explore other initiatives. After that, you have had a very successful career as a banker, and then now you have become an entrepreneur running a very successful F&B, talent transformation, and now in the future, a tourism business as well. We want to understand from you, how does that evolution from a cricketer to a banker and now a very successful businessman?
Yeah, thanks, Nitya, for the question, and it's really relevant, I guess. Part of it relates to my era, and when I say that, I think the modern day cricketer has many opportunities to make a living out of the game, which is fantastic, and I really support cricket's involvement into professionalism. But I guess my era was on the cusp of professionalism. So many of us, we had to have an education before we started, and quite frankly, I wasn't good enough as a youngster to make representative teams. So I was able to get my qualification, my commerce and management degree, and I loved, I majored in business and marketing, which I absolutely loved. So I was able to go through that process before the pressures of having to decide and to commit to full-time cricket. And so, that came along. I was very fortunate to get that opportunity to play for my province. Initially, that was what it was all about. I wanted to represent Canterbury, where I came from. And so for me, I got to do that relatively quickly from when I really took cricket seriously. And from there, actually, it was one of the shortest transformations into international cricket. Looking back, I probably needed a few more games to learn a bit more, but of course, I love the opportunity to play for my country. What you asked the question, so how then and why then the transition into the business world? And I guess what cricket gave me was a real opening into different worlds, different cultures, different relationships and different people. So, I got to tour countries that I would not have toured. I got to meet people that had a completely different walk of life and experience than what I had back at home in a relatively sheltered environment. So for me, that was one of those things was coming to India. And when I just finished cricket, unfortunately it was cut short with injury. I got to represent New Zealand cricket again in a role that I then was negotiating with the Board of Control of Cricket in India. Had a fantastic relationship with them. It got me into the country to have a look around the country, to meet new people. And then what I realised then is that we had a range of products that weren't being offered in this country. So I guess it was a natural progression for me at that stage into entrepreneurship. Fortunately, though, then it comes down to relationships, and I had connections with Stephen Fleming, Brendan McCullum, Dan Vittori, and another business partner, and we set about by the adventure into India 12 or 13 years ago. So, and we'll get into the details later on, but what a place to come, and what an amazing opportunity there exists, not only actually for New Zealand and New Zealand products and services for that matter, but also for the world. And we firmly thought then, 12 or 13 years ago, when not many people did, that India was going to become a powerhouse. And it's certainly transforming. And I think, going from the 10th largest economy in the world when we first started to currently being the 4th largest, soon to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. Wow, what a transition.
Amazing, amazing. And the journey. So, Geoff, you have been a life member of the New Zealand cricket. You have been on the board of New Zealand cricket for almost 8 years. As you mentioned, you first came to India as a cricketer representing New Zealand cricket. And then almost 12 or 13 years ago, when nobody even saw that there is an opportunity in India, from a country like New Zealand, you saw an opportunity and you saw a deeper level of understanding in this country that this is something that the country needs. And today, I think Quality New Zealand, especially the food and beverage division, has got 350 hotel tie-ups in India, all the five-star, the topmost ones. It is in more than 40 cities right now in India. And you could have been easily become a trader in India and, supplied the stuff, New Zealand stuff. But then you decided to disrupt the market by becoming one of the most successful supply chain companies. So how did that thought came into your mind?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because it actually means a hell of a lot to us, and it means a hell of a lot to our founders. I'll take a step back. Stephen Fleming, Brendan McCullum, Dan Patori all came into this market 20 odd years ago and made a huge name for themselves. Not only as players, as former captains of the country, but also respected team members, and then of course respected coaches. So all of them had a massive history, and they love this country. Most importantly, and what really comes to the nub of the question is it's about relationships. And, ironically, through the screen, and that's really largely all that we knew of India, and probably India knew of New Zealand really, is probably a few Bollywood movies early on and probably some cricket field action. But once you actually get ingrained into the country, you realise that although India are fantastic traders, a couple of thousand years of practice, you're some of the best traders in the world. But actually, the real business is relationship-based. It's all about networks. It's all about working with others, partners in a market to make the most out of this massive opportunity. So, to me, we were lucky because we had networks through cricket that we already understood a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So we knew that's where we wanted our business model to go to. We didn't want to be transactional. There were other reasons, such as we wanted to reduce our risk. We came back with, at the time, there was a whole lot of risk. So being in market, being in control of the supply chain, making sure that you had traceability and you had food safety systems, thoughts in your mind. And of course, the ability to directly market and make your business more efficient were all aspects, yes. But the overriding piece was we wanted to be local.
Yeah.
We wanted to develop our relationships with our Indian brothers and sisters, and also then not just take from India.
Yeah.
We wanted also to be seen to be giving back to India. And that, when I say giving back, developing, and as you know, my greatest pride really comes from the fact that we're building this amazing team of people both across F&B and into talent transformation, and then ultimately into tourism as well. So that is the most rewarding aspect as well. But all comes back to relationships. All comes back to, if you truly invest in India and you truly understand India, then you understand that it's relationship, and it's all based on relationship.
And brilliant. I think, and with this, I think I want to talk about a very small but a very important aspect of the business model. Since I have the privilege of working with you and the legends of the cricket, I want to ask you, having Sir Richard Headley, Stephen Fleming, Brendan McCullum, Daniel Vettori, and then there are some other big names who are a part of the shareholders group of Quality New Zealand. What is the most difficult aspect? Earning trust in cricket or earning trust in business? Which is the most?
Well, there actually it isn't either or; it's both. And that's the truth of the matter, right? And I'm really proud of that, to be frank, because you should have to earn respect.
Yeah.
You should have to earn trust.
Yeah.
And whether that's in the business environment or whether that's on the sports field,
Yeah.
it's equally as important, right? Performance, recognition, reward, all comes from building those sorts of rapport and trust through relationships.
Yeah.
And so, I guess on the cricket field, whilst I certainly wasn't the most talented, I just loved the team aspect. I loved playing with people that I just aspired to and I admired from the field, including my opposition, and I got to play against some of the greats of Indian cricket, for example. And I pinch myself today to think of some of those names, that I got to be on the same field with, really, from a person, again, coming from a very humble cricket background, but equally with my own team. And what I'm particularly proud of, and I think why we have been relatively successful in terms of our journey so far, is that every single one of those people that you've just mentioned are passionate about this country and have a genuine interest to make a difference.
Yeah.
It's not superficial. It's not about the straight numbers or return. It's far bigger than that. It's the social accountability and responsibility. It's actually giving back for what they've received as well, what India's given them. And that's that, reciprocity that actually makes relationships and business works. You've got to have that respect. And I think, I'm extremely proud. You mentioned before, I'm really proud of those guys, particularly for the involvement and investment of time and effort. But it's also the other shareholders that we've got, 54 shareholders in our business that have been incredibly patient, that add a huge amount of value through a range of different skills and attributes, ranging from captains of the All Blacks and former All Blacks to chief financial and capital markets companies, marketers, accountants, company directors, agricultural-based entrepreneurs and experts. We are so blessed to be able to call on those people, and that's how the business was built, based on identifying people that can add value and identifying on people that equally share a vision that India is going to become a powerhouse in the world. And we're getting there.
With that, my other question is, Geoff, since in our company, the chairperson of our company is a very dynamic lady, Miss Nettles Lemore. And whenever I've spoken to you and whenever you interact with each one of us in the F&B or in the education side of it, you always believe that women need to be empowered. And there have been a lot of changes in a good way happened in New Zealand. And you have also started seeing a lot of changes happening in India also. What is your take on it? How the representation should be?
Yeah. Again, another great question, Nitya. And I learned a lot. I was, again, incredibly blessed to be given an opportunity to be on the board of New Zealand Cricket for 8 years. And I know when we first started on that board, I think 1 of 8 board members was a female. And it's not that it's a male-female thing per se, but actually you just make it that you carry on with your decisions as if, you're... But when you really think about it, the lack of diversity around your thinking is so inappropriate if you've got, a misrepresentation of the population purely on that basis. What I learned was, and it's not so much, diversity as a whole, not necessarily just male and female, but what I learned was we chose to then recognise that, no, we've got to change here. 50% of our fan base was female. 50% of our of the support coming to our children playing the game, well, in fact, larger than that, came from women, helping with coaching, helping with scoring, helping with getting their daughters and sons ready for cricket, doing a lot of that, what we call mahi, the work.
Yeah.
And so, but more than that, then of course it's the decision making. And it's actually, okay, if we're marketing cricket in a particular way, is that right to half the population? Or in fact, in this case, the household decision maker.
Yeah.
So, we were naive as to the importance and absolutely endorsed and adopted a principle, well, we need to make a change. And it's one of the proudest things, as a group of directors that we made change to the extent then that we looked and said, no, this is wrong. We need to develop women governors, and then we need to encourage and support those women governors so that they feel comfortable and are participating. And of course, their talent is unbelievable, right? But what happens then is we end up with the right representation around the board, and the decision making is just so much more powerful. Yeah. So, you come from different angles, and diversity brings that. So, and that's it was a massive lesson. It's not just the same people making the same decision for the same reasons. You're challenging, and that's what a board should do. And not only a board, then of course management. Yeah. And once you get that stage and you provide those leaders, and you mentioned Nettles, and I'm incredibly proud and grateful for what she's done for our business. And she's led through an era really when it wasn't necessarily encouraged, and it wasn't easy to become, chair of boards or have a pathway through to weave and duck and dive to be in that position, and I just admire her so much for the tenacity to get to that. But now she's a leader, and now she is the example that others look up to. And I'm seeing the growth of young women that are putting their hand up, not only for management roles, senior management roles, but also for governance roles. And it's equally as important. So we asked about then this market, and what I love to see, when we first came into this market, I'll be honest, there weren't a lot of females in senior leadership roles. And we have noticed a massive shift. And so we are really encouraged by that, because we know, again, forgetting even the male-female side, but we know the decision-making is going to be so much better. Yeah. And we know then that if there's equality in and around whether it's a male or female that gets an opportunity, then that's great for our society. And so we need male champions for that, and we need to support a changing landscape. We don't need to take a defensive approach around that. We need to actually say, well, hang on, this is going to be a better world for our sons and daughters and their sons and daughters as we go through the generations. Yeah. And how great is it that we can actually play a little part in that generational change?
Absolutely. So now coming to that, I think I want to know, and let's talk about the evolution of Quality New Zealand. Why education? Why talent transformation? Why leadership platforms that we are building? Today we have partners in 13 countries. We represent 40 global universities. We have got more than 600 institutional tie-ups. So how does that idea of getting into education system came, and how does that making it a bridge? Because when the FTA was also signed, even the top leadership of both the countries spoke about education and talent transformation as a key core. What's your take on it? Why Quality New Zealand ever decided to get into this zone?
Well, I think there was about 10 questions in that, but anyway, I'll go through one at a time. The first thing was, and people often say to us, well, how does F&B link with education and ultimately link with tourism, right? But there are links, and particularly if you understand the Indian environment, you can very clearly see where the links are. But for us, so the reason I say that is because if I showed you our business plan 13 years ago, we had those three verticals. So, we knew the low-hanging fruit was food and beverage. So that's obviously where we've focused predominantly. But absolutely, we could see this opportunity in India for education and talent transformation. So it's not just about student mobility. We want to be a part of someone's journey through skill development, through their work, through obviously education, and so that we're part of their life in a way and helping, knowing really the capability. If we get this right and we contribute in our own little way, then we're actually helping India achieve what it's capable of achieving. And we know, and we, under the National Education Program, it's got challenges because of just the sheer size, of the country, and the standards and the demand for education, if you like, and relative to the number of institutions currently. Yeah. So, helping facilitate an expansion of educational institutions and skill development institutions can only therefore help fill a bit of a void that otherwise would be there. And where we see it is there was a natural, again, coming back to it all, we understood that person to person, there is a real natural fit. So therefore, and because of our systems actually are relatively closely aligned. Yeah. So there's a natural fit here, but someone needed to act as the conduit between the institutions and the opportunities that's in this country and the expertise and the opportunities that we have in our country.
Yeah.
And this is not just about, again, one-way traffic.
Mm-hmm.
What the brilliant, even since we started this, you know, is that this has morphed far greater in that now there's this equal opportunity for people to come from India, yes, into New Zealand, and that's great, you get opportunity, but actually for New Zealanders to come over here and learn about this, the fastest growing large economy in the world. Who, you know, if you're across a whole range of different subject matter, why wouldn't you want to be involved in that? Why wouldn't you want to start your connecting with your networks and learning new systems? And so we're envisaging this great crossover through education. Of course, with that comes this awareness and education of each other's country, comes a respect for each other, comes more cohesiveness and collaboration and partnerships. So through education, yes, there's obviously business opportunities within that, but moreover, there's a chance to change the bigger picture. And that's really appealing to us.
So now this is a very interesting question, and I want to know, because whenever we talk to a lot of people, especially the startup these days, and the startup world actually talks about, everyone these days is talking about valuation, exits, speed. But when we talk to you, you talk about patience. You talk about long-term commitment and building institutional legacy. But these days we see a lot of short-term noise being rewarded. How does that thought process work?
It's a real challenge because I'm also very conscious that I've got a shareholding group, including myself, that's going, actually, we've got to at some stage provide an appropriate return, right? But if you truly believe in a country in this case, and you really understand that, then, and it's really worth the value. And I talk about value in terms of the relationships, in terms of long-term success, in terms of being able to just play a small part in helping connectivity. Then you want to invest. You want to be a part of that journey for a long term, not a short term. It's not transactional. If you want to transact and, you know, almost apply the commodity trade or the one-off trade piece, that's simply not us. And I don't believe actually that's India either. Deep down, I mean, I know lots of, again, there's lots of good examples, services and products where that happens. But fundamentally, there's so much growth opportunity in this country that, you know, it does take time to build relationships. And I think no greater example of that actually is what our government's just recently achieved. And, you know, initially it was looking at this relationship as transactional and how do we get a deal and how, but actually what was realised by this government in recent times is that, first of all, you've got to build a relationship. You've got to build respect, and you've got to actually, because once you build relationships and respect, you actually start to ask the question, well, what do you want out of this? And how can we help you before you ask actually what I can take? And so the attitude changes as well. And I think that's the part that's really, really important in this. So, you know, I think there's a number of different things in that, but yeah, realistically, you know, it's about making sure that we open the doors for everybody, we build the relationships and rapport, and we, you know, again, we really invest our time and we stay patient and we actually understand the opportunity for it is and invest in that. And one last thing on that, I'm sorry, but it's also, in some cases, we need to look at our strat plans. And we need to actually say, typically we operate on really short-term strat plans in New Zealand, right? And if you actually understand India, it's not about short-term. It's about actually long-term. So I want us to now also challenge as businesses to say, well, is a 3 or 5 year even strat plan appropriate for India? Shouldn't we be looking at 10 and 20 year strat plans? That then changes how our ROI on our CEs, and then therefore your strategies and your investment around people, and actually your expectations, rather than transactional, you become relational.
Absolutely. Now, here comes the most exciting part, which I've been waiting for, the rapid fire one. So, and we do not give much time for that one, Geoff. So, my first question to you is India in one word.
Excitement.
New Zealand in one word.
Innovative.
Leadership for you is?
Relationships, networks, commitment.
Brilliant.
The most underrated skill in business for you?
Undoubtedly patience.
Wonderful.
Now is the most exciting one for me. What is tougher for you, facing a batsman like Saurabh Ganguly or negotiating with a business person in Mumbai?
Oh, brilliant. Oh, my honest answer is because, they were just such great players. So obviously, and I had the pleasure of getting him out once, which I hold on to. So, no, I just had so much respect. All those guys in that era were fantastic. And to play against them was an honour and a privilege. I would say that because I just know how good they are, how much it meant to them. And with respect to my friends here on a business sense, I like to think that it's not so much the negotiation, it's a relationship and a total benefit to both parties. So it's probably easier to do that than the other.
Okay. Legacy you want to leave behind?
Yeah, it's really important to me actually. I want us as a company to be really well respected for our ethics, for contributing to society, and I mean that by advancing in this case, helping to advance the country, and that might be science through skill development, it might be education, it might be that we are supporting a tourism business and tourism activities and food and beverage and so forth. But actually, it's also the communities. So if we can play a small role in becoming the gateway to India for New Zealand, and actually bringing our two countries together, I want us to be ultimately respected as being the pioneers, or some of the pioneers that bridge those gaps, that showed a little bit of the way between our countries about how fruitful and how brilliant this relationship can be, both at a professional and personal level.
I think brilliant, beautiful. One advice to young students, professionals, and entrepreneurs that you want to give?
Stick at it. I had personal adversity when I was playing. I had 7 fractures in my back. I had to finish playing when I was 28, when I was really only learning the game. I had people behind me and supporting me that said, stick at it. Here's how we'll take you through it. I had to learn literally how to bowl again. I then got a chance to play and become the leading wicket taker in a World Cup, which has changed my life. So I've had a real example of just by persevering, working hard, having good ethics, commitment, dedication, and it's the same with even the business. We've been through some really tough times, COVID included. There's always challenges, but it's that tenacity and that real desire to make it to the other end, and to do it for a bigger cause than just yourself.
Wow. Wow. Brilliant one. And I think with this, I come to the last question that we ask to each and every guest who is here in the Outlier Room. What does the word outlier mean to Geoff Allott?
I admire the outlier. I admire the outlier because they are prepared to be different and are prepared to challenge the norm. And so, in our case, I'm so proud of the people, our shareholders, our ambassadors, our staff, our commitment to being different, to being prepared to go into a market where everyone said, no way, too hard. A whole lot of reasons why not to do it. And I guess we were, and to some extent still are, the outlier. But what outliers often become is the new lead. And that, to me, that's the ultimate.
Wow. Thank you so much, Geoff, for a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant session with us. And I think our viewers are going to learn a lot of things from this podcast. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this podcast. That was Geoff Allott, from cricket field to boardroom, from performance to patience, and then building a business of legacy. Geoff's journey talks about being a trailblazer in the industry and being an outlier, refusing to be just an average. Stay bold and stay uncommon. Thank you so much.